You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Ho, 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 and season's greetings, and welcome to episode 120 of Making Tracks, brought to you by those happy Christmas elves over at fanfatracks.com. It's a week before Christmas, so I guess this makes this our Christmas special.
Christmas in the stars, Christmas in the stars, what a merry Christmas this will be. Christmas in the stars, out among the stars, what a merry, merry Christmas, a very merry Christmas this will be.
If you don't know this by now, I'm Mark, and I couldn't do this episode alone, so please give a festive, cheery hello to a man whose only Christmas fantasy is to kiss a Wookiee under the mistletoe. It's Mr. Mark Newbold. Mark, how you doing, buddy?
Don't knock it until you've tried it.
Excellent.
I'm very well, thank you. Yes, I'm good. Not suffering from jabs and stuff like you are.
Yeah, I know. I had my COVID booster on Friday and spent the day yesterday pretty much laid up on the sofa, but it was a great excuse to just sit and just watch a load of movies, which is it's not a bad thing. No Star Wars, although I did watch, believe it or not, I watched for the first time as well, Jingle All the Way, with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jake Lloyd, a younger Jake Lloyd than what we see in The Phantom Menace, because this came out in 1996. Do you know what? Jake Lloyd's performance was a million times better than what we saw on The Phantom Menace. I was so blown away by it. Bearing in mind he was so much younger as well. I was just like, wow, that shows what happens when I guess you have a director who can work with kids a little bit better, isn't quite so awkward. Anyhow, this isn't the Phantom Menace Passion podcast. This is Making Tracks. And I suppose we should probably start off with the big question. What has come through your letterbox this week? What new, fantastic, amazing Star Wars items have you had through?
Weirdly, again, and this is becoming a recurring thing, and it's slightly worrying. I'm sure Ruth wouldn't agree, but I think it's slightly worrying. I've not had an awful lot. I had the re-armoured Boba Fett helmet come from the good folks at Hasbro. I've got a melon-sized head, so it fits. I can't believe it. So I was actually able to get the thing on. Can't keep my glasses on, but I can actually get it on. So I was chuffed to bits with that. There's a review on the site. It's very, very cool. So I'm going to be sort of showing that off on Good Morning Tatooine. So that did come through, but I didn't buy that. That was sent by Hasbro very kindly. So that's literally the only thing. That's so sad. What about you?
I had the green set of vintage Star Wars top cards come through. Yeah, and also I've started to make a dent in this year's Christmas calendar list. So I picked up a Mandalorian calendar for 2022 from Tesco's, and actually with the club card discount, it came in at £3.75. And this is before Christmas. And I was thinking, well, you can't complain. And to be fair, actually, I was with Karen and she was like, well, at that price, you've got to get it. I was like, to be fair, absolutely. I think at that price, I've got to get it. It would be crazy not to. And then we went down into a shopping centre in Stevenage and we came across a calendar club. And I think I counted 8 different calendars for this year for Star Wars.
I can't remember a year when they've ever done as many as this year.
There's a lot. It's bizarre because none of them really get announced. They all kind of come out and you kind of see them in different places. You go to H&B and they've got one, and when you go to like Tesco's, we've got a couple of others. And I'm not like a completist when it comes to calendars. I try and pick up at least 1 or 2 each year. But this year, Same. I was so surprised. But then also just walking around, bearing in mind it's not a film year, just the amount of like Star Wars stuff now out on the shelves. I mean, admittedly, most of it is Grogu or Grogu shaped, which I kind of got a little bit bored about when I was walking around. It's quite nice to see so much readily available Star Wars merch for people just to be able to pick up.
Absolutely. I mean, we're going to need our calendars next year in 2022. It's looking set to be a ridiculously busy year. And when you think about it, it's very, very true. We've got so much Star Wars content already that every year is a celebration year. And on StarWars.com, they sat down with Gareth Edwards and had a chat about Rogue One, obviously, which I still can't get my head around. It's 5 years old. I mean, before we dig into it, can you believe that it's 5 years since Rogue One came out? That does not seem right to me.
It's not. I think partly it's because all the films came out, thick and fast. When you think about it, you think about we had basically a film a year for like 5 years. And so at one point it was, you had a film, April you had the Blu-ray, September, October you had like the Force Friday, and then you were basically into countdown to the next film, and then it repeated. Actually looking back, if it ever rolls around again like this for anybody else or any other fandom, it's like you kind of need to appreciate it, because it's, I think when when we look back on that era of the sequel trilogy and all those films which came out, I think we were actually pretty darn lucky, to have them so, come so quickly, one after the other. And both of us get invited to premieres and preview screenings and stuff like that. So can't take it for granted, I don't think.
I transpose that era onto the OT era, for example, or onto the prequel trilogy era. If this was, Force Awakens was Star Wars, we're now beyond Jedi. We're out, we're well out of it because those films are only 2 years apart. But to think that we had those films in that 4-year time span and Solo and Rogue One, it's a complete mind blower. And especially now we're beyond that and we're in a television era now. We're waiting for Book of Boba. We're in the thick of Mandalorian. We now know there's a season 2 Bad Batch coming, as if there wasn't going to be, but they've pretty much confirmed that on Disney Plus. It's a different time period, but as you say, when you're in it, you don't quite know where the demarcation lines are, do you?
You're rolling with it, and you're constantly looking forward to the next trailer, the next teaser trailer, the next merch drop, and then the next film premiere invite, and then the next time you can get actual tickets online for the films, and then the midnight opening and stuff. And you spend your Christmas actually either just kind of like living out the cinema, or at least I did, or just being able to talk to fans online and just get everybody's take and everybody's breakdown and, hear their complaints and their exaltations of what worked really well and all that kind of stuff. So kind of miss it because the one thing you have to say, as much as it's amazing getting so much TV content, it's TV content and it doesn't feel quite the same. I mean, you think this time last year we were getting our knickers in the twist over the fact that Luke Skywalker just made his appearance on The Mandalorian. That's
very true, yeah. And I mean, goodness knows what we're going to be saying when we see Book of Boba when it starts. I mean, Robert Rodriguez was interviewed, I think it was the Hollywood Reporter if I'm correct, this week, and said, well, every clip you've seen in every teaser trailer is from the first half of the first episode, because anything beyond that is too much of a spoiler. And I love that. I think Jurassic World did that, and they said everything in the trailer was from the first the first half an hour of the film or whatever it was. Here now, we've got Gareth Edwards looking back, for him, 6 years. Farther from last week, we had Guy Henry there, who of course plays Tarkin. He gets mentioned in this interview, and Brian Herring, who worked on the film. And it must be strange for Gareth looking back, because he was a fan, but he's a filmmaker and a talented one at that. And he goes into this film, this amazing sort of John Knoll-inspired story. I don't know if you've had a chance to read the interview.
It's a fascinating look at interview, isn't it, by Dan Brooks? Yeah,
and extensive as well.
I was surprised that, normally with StarWars.com it's such a controlled and sanitized output for content for Star Wars, because obviously it's like the official channel. So, but actually to kind of get as much detail as we did, and just just the fact some of the timeline stuff, creators of Star Wars always get a little bit cagier when it comes to expressing how long things took, or when they start and stuff. But Gareth seems to be pretty open and honest. He was having conversations early on, but when they called him in, he was still working on Godzilla, and it was only him. Lucasfilm basically only spoke to him. They clearly knew who they wanted to do this film. It seems like actually, generally, I think Gareth would probably be a great director to bring back, I think.
With his love of Star Wars anyway, and his knowledge of Star Wars, he refers, I think Dan says here, he was the first person to interview Gareth about Star Wars. And they were talking about when Gareth was 30 and he went to Tunisia with the blue milk and all that malarkey that he talked about on stage at Celebration, if you remember. So that's a great memory for any Star Wars fan, let alone a guy who ends up directing one. Such a cool interview, because it's so extensive. Sometimes these interviews get edited for, and Gareth can talk, so I can well imagine it was a good long interview anyway. But just mentioning the whole John Knoll thing, and I just think now, where we are now, 2022's on the doorstep, really can't believe that. And you look at something like Rogue One, you just mentioned Mando from last year, and they do a similar thing with Hamill, and the effects techniques get better and better. The new Spider-Man film, obviously, that there's villains from the past appear in the movie and are made to look pretty much as they did in the case of the original Spider-Man, 20 years ago, and slightly less for Spider-Man 2 and so on. They've done a brilliant job with that as well, to the point where you don't even notice it now. No, like Captain Marvel was brilliant with Samuel L. Jackson, and they're at that point now that the VFX are really getting so smooth and subtle. I think it wouldn't surprise me one iota if we woke up one morning on Disney Plus and put Rogue One on, and they'd just done another pass at Guy Henry's version of Tarkin, to tighten it up a little bit, because visual effects have moved on in the last 6 years.
That's true. That's the thing, isn't it? But to be honest, I think, so I watched Rogue One the other day, I think the Tarkin CGI really holds up. I think for one shot that I probably could do with a bit of work is a Princess Leia shot, which is just that uncanny valley, as people like to refer to it. It's not quite right, and I don't know if it's because we're so used to looking at Carrie Fisher in that costume from that era. But there's just something wasn't quite right. And bearing in mind, that was the first shot that apparently they delivered to ILM, and literally one of the last shots, or the last shot they delivered back. So they spent a long time working on that shot, trying to get it right. And I suppose I think with Tarkin and that, you probably a little bit of license with it, but when you're trying to recreate Princess Leia, you kind of need to get it spot on as close as possible anyway.
I'm Gareth Edwards, and you're listening to Making Tracks on Fantha Tracks Radio.
The latest The Book of Boba Fett teaser has landed over at StarWars.com and, of course, all around the rest of the world within milliseconds. It's called Ready, and it features, of course, Boba Fett and Fennec on Tatooine. What was your vibe from this one? Because I think we've said this, they all feel like a mood. They're a mood or a vibe or a tone.
Yeah,
what are you getting from this one?
It's called Ready, and I think that's exactly what they're doing. They're getting ready, aren't they? They're kind of gearing up. We're starting to get a slight hint that there's going to be some kind of external force kind of coming down on Boba, and it looks like these guys, whoever they are, in the kind of like the red and the maroon with the shields and stuff, are going to be it. So whether or not that's a power grab or something else, I don't know. They're not really giving a huge amount away, and it seems like the first episode is going to be jam-packed, full of action and excitement. So I can't wait to sit down and see what this is all about.
One of the things that's come across really well is that we're obviously re-establishing Fett as a character, but almost as a new character, because doesn't appear to be in the same game as he was before. I'm sure bounty hunting to a degree will come into it, but it feels like now he's been through what he's been through. He's got his armor back. He's a more seasoned man because of what's happened to him, that if he needs a job doing, he'll send somebody else out on that job. So now it says in the little blurb that we've got with it, legendary bounty hunter Boba Fett, mercenary Fennec Shand, navigating the galaxy's underworld when they return to the sands of Tatooine to stake their claim on the territory once ruled by Jabba the Hutt and his crime syndicate. They're the boss characters, obviously. That great shot at the end of season 2, which apparently Disney didn't know was being added to the episode.
Really?
I read the other day. Yeah, Lucasfilm put that in and didn't tell Disney, apparently. I think, again, Rodriguez said it in that Hollywood Reporter interview. It's one thing to take the throne, it's another thing to keep it. It really does feel like this show is going to really get into that, the syndicates, because we've seen it in Clone Wars and a little bit in other moving media. We've seen it loads in books and comics, but more in the Legends era than the modern era. So I think now to see how somebody in Jabba's position, which is kind of where Fett's putting himself, we're 6 years on from Jabba being throttled by Princess Leia, so the organisation run by Jabba wouldn't have the same heft now as it did when he was running it. Jabba had been around for centuries and people would be petrified of him, so a lot of people would just do it. Whereas now there's power grabs, post-Empire, all that sort of stuff, and Fett's walking into that. Oh, I think the opportunities for storytelling is just incredible.
You're right. And actually, I didn't even really think about it until you just said it, that, it's been 6 years since the death of Jabba. So who's taken over in that time? What have they done with the syndicate? How's the door been left open for Fett and Fennec to basically be able to walk in and, or kick the door down, I should say, and kind of storm in and take it? So it'll be interesting just to kind of learn that as well. I mean, because you go back to the War of the Bounty Hunters and you see all those huts in the Crimson Dawn kind of auction and stuff, and it's like it's not like there is just Jabba, there's other Hutt there. They've all got vested interest and they all have a thirst for power. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that as well. We've seen kind of power grabs, I believe, in the Clone Wars with Darth Maul and Savage Opress and stuff, but that was a hostile takeover, and this doesn't, at least from the short clips we've seen of Boba sitting down with the various kind of lieutenants and heads of gangs and stuff, it doesn't look like it's going to be like that. I kind of feel like it's going to be, that kind of Sopranos, mafiosa kind of vibe about it, without probably being too overt, hopefully. And I think this show is going to have a lot to offer, and we're only 10 days away.
It's going to be interesting to see what tone they set for that very first episode. Like you said, it feels like it's going to be a lot of action. And I totally agree with the Godfather vibe. You'll only wake up next to a Tauntaun's head if you've really put your foot in the poodoo sort of thing. That he wants to that whole thing of sitting at the table, I want to rule by respect and all that sort of stuff. Why wouldn't you go for the path of least resistance initially? And then if they start kicking back, well, that's when you bring in your buddies, or that's when you suit up and go and do it yourself, because it's still Boba Fett. So options are just incredible. And really, I really want to see the nuts and bolts of the Boba Fennec team up and their relationship and why they work together seemingly so well. I think that's going to be really interesting to see.
Hi, this is Hugh Quashing. I've had great pleasure in recording this interview for Fantha Tracks.
So at last month's Wales Comic-Con in Telford, which of course isn't in Wales, but who's splitting hairs, we had the chance to speak to a bunch of Star Wars guests. You've listened to a lot of the interviews already. There's still a few to come, but we really wanted to play you this one. It's Mike Quinn, the man behind, or you could say inside, Nien Nunb, and various other characters He was in the original trilogy. He worked on the Yoda visual effects for Attack of the Clones. A lot of people don't know that for ILM. But he also reappeared in the sequel trilogy, of course, as Ian Num. So here's us chatting with Mike at the recent Wales Comic-Con in Telford. So here we are, we're at Wales Comic-Con. We stood at the desk or table of Mike Quinn. He stood right next to me, looking at me expectantly, waiting for me to say something weird. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing very well, thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. It's been a while. When was last time? Capital Sci-Fi?
It was 1900s. I think it was 1937.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That was a good year.
It was a great year, apparently. I don't know. So, but it was a few years, right?
It was, yeah,
3 or 4, 5 years, 4.
Oh, no, less than that. Two or three, I think.
Yeah, you're
I'm
right.
very forgettable, so
No,
I'll
you're
forgive
right.
you for thinking that.
It's something like that. It's been a long couple of years, let's put it that way.
And speaking of that, it has been a long couple of years. How have you been occupying yourself?
Oh my goodness, I haven't stopped. I work on projects at home. I mean, I started doing cons again in June of this year, but I've been filming and working on projects as well, and then working on my own project, making puppets and doing music things at home as well, and developing stuff. So I haven't stopped. It's great.
Tell us about the puppets. That sounds fascinating.
So yeah, basically, I made some. I came up with a new practice puppet from people from my academy to use. So it's like a little furry monster with teeth and big blobby nose, quite appealing. So I've been making those for fans and puppeteers, in my spare time, basically. Yeah. So.
And being back out at events, we've spoken to a couple of the guys. Everyone seems to be enjoying it. It's a happy vibe. It's a good feeling. You feeling that as well?
Very much so. I mean, people are really ready to come out, and everyone's having record attendances at pretty well most shows. Everyone's happy again, and we need this. We've been, waiting for this for a long time, and we get to see our friends again. We get to see another human again. That's quite something in itself.
It is.
It's great. It's really good, and everyone's having a great time. It's amazing. It's lovely.
And you enjoying being out talking about Nian again and talking about the work that he did in the films?
Definitely. It's nice, to know that people really appreciate it and enjoy that stuff, and I'd like to do him again at some point in the future. It could happen, right? Maybe a younger Nine Numb in something, in a series or something. So I'm hopeful that
Book of Boba's in that sort of post-Return of the Jedi era as well. So
yeah, you never know, right? I'm open to it. I had to wait 30 odd years to do him again. I don't want to wait another 30 odd years.
No.
I don't mind waiting a year or two.
Was it fun when this new round of films came along and you came back as waggling my fingers, one of the legacy characters?
It was amazing. Yeah, very, very. I mean, I was hopeful. I knew that they were going to what the new trilogy was going to be roughly. Then that 9 should still be around, so I was quite proactive in chasing that up as well to make sure I didn't get left behind.
Yeah, and how well that character, and we spoke to Tim Rose a couple of weeks ago, and obviously coming back as that, but those characters sat so nicely with the new characters.
We both were in the same boat with that one. We were the legacy old guys coming back, which was great though, because they didn't have to use us. They could have used anybody, but the fact that they did and got the original voices as well is really a wonderful. I guess that was JJ and Kathleen Kennedy, I would assume. It was wonderful, you know.
And coming back into that scenario, was there ever the opportunity to, you've got decades of wisdom in this arena, so was there ever the chance to sort of impart that to people and a little nod here and a wink there and this might help or that might help?
Actually, yeah. Whether people listen is another matter. I'm always willing to, let people know ideas and ways to do things and stuff like that. Yeah. So, but most people on these movies are pretty well experienced anyway, and we all just kind of work together as a team and help each other out. Yeah. So it goes both ways, Yeah.
And what's next for you, apart from Christmas?
What's next for me? Let's see. I have I'm singing on a single that drops next week. It's for a friend of mine, and it's a fundraiser for a hospice in Lancashire, St Catherine's. So I'm working on the music video currently, editing that, but we recorded that a few months ago. So that's coming out next week. Super. So I'm kind of busy with that at the moment.
Brilliant.
That's not your first musical exploit either, because we run a music podcast on the Phantom Tracks Network, and you did Comfortably Numb with Blues Harvest, which which featured, and it was brilliant.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, what was hard about that was because I'm a studio guy, and that's a long song, and having to do that all in one take, and you get right near the end and you mess something else. Oh no, got to start all over again because you're on video the whole time, you're on camera, So it's like, but whereas this is more of a studio song, so I can do it in bits and. It's a bit more produced and stuff. So, but yeah, it's fun though. I love it. I love doing music stuff.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Good to see you again.
And you.
I'll see you later.
You will.
Bye.
So the Library of Congress in the United States of America have very wisely decided to add in, as part of their class of 2021, Return of the Jedi. It's now part of their National Film Registry, which means that all 3 original trilogy Star Wars movies are in there. There's all sorts of other classics in there. Raiders is in there. E.T.'s in there. You name it, the big films, they're in there. I think Fellowship of the Ring has gone in this year as well. Mark Hamill spoke about the film's inclusion in this 2021 list. They refer to the list of 21 as being the most diverse in the 33 years since they've been putting the films in. So Jedi's in there, Selena, Fellowship of the Ring, all sorts of stuff in there. Very diverse and inclusive. But really, the question is, no doubt Jedi should be in there. But when you look back, and we were talking about Rogue One earlier, when you look back at Jedi, you kind of think of the original trilogy as a whole sometimes, which is why Phantom Menace had such a rotten time of it, because it was trying to stack up against 3 films, not just one, because they become a collective thing in our consciousness, Star Wars Empire and Jedi. When you look at Jedi in its isolation, you could argue Jedi made more of an impact on the zeitgeist than Empire. I mean, Jedi's got so much in it that's memorable, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I'm surprised if they had to do it as 3 separate entries. They couldn't have just taken the Star Wars trilogy and dropped them all in at the same time. To be honest, I think all 11 should go in. That's my personal take. I think one of the most iconic moments in film is Luke, I am your father. Or no, I am your father. Or any other kind of meme or kind of like variation that people use in TV, in, satirical comics and everyday life. I think half of the Father's Day merchandise which comes out in the last 10, 15 years or so is basically riffing on a variation of that line. With Jedi, you've got the Ewoks, and they're pretty iconic. And you've got a certain gold bikini, that's very iconic. It is a film that I think, as like sequels kind of progress, it's always tough to tie up like a storyline, really. It doesn't matter if it's TV or film. Return of the Jedi has done it better than just about any trilogy third installment has so far.
People need to remember what a brilliant job Jedi did of wrapping up not just one film, but 3 films. And the last sort of third of Return of the Jedi is the finale of all of it and balances it so well. And I mean, Luke, George kind of, in a way, replicates that with Phantom Menace, because you got the air battle, space battle, lightsaber battle, ground battle rather, all going on very much like Jedi. Rise of Skywalker was never going to win anyway, because it wasn't just wrapping up one film or a trilogy, but 9 films. That film had no chance in that sense. But Jedi, you're right, it just does a brilliant job of tying it all together and putting, for the time being, of course, in the best sense, Mandalorian has kind of unpicked a little bit of that, the sequel trilogy as well, that the war ended at Jakku, not at Endor, and Mando's sort of giving you a little bit of the post-Jedi world we're all monster keen to dive into, not just for nostalgia, but because we're just curious about what happened next. I think Star Wars was just iconic as a whole. I think Empire, in a way, is iconic for a moment. The one moment you think of is, no, I am your father. But Jedi seems to be remembered for visuals. The first time we see Jabba, who we've been hearing about forever. The first time we see the Emperor, who we've been hearing about forever. A lot of things got brought to us in Jedi that we only heard of before. Okay, yeah, you kind of see the Emperor in Empire through the hologram briefly. But by the time we saw Jedi in 83, it looked completely different to how the hologram looked in Empire then and sounded different. Ewoks, as you say, that bikini, never going to apologise for enjoying that. So there's so many great visuals in Jedi. Yeah, I think it more than earns its place in this ranking. Great news that Jedi's gone in, definitely well deserved. What Star Wars film would you put in next?
Rogue One.
There's a question for you.
I think Rogue One.
There you go.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
We have a listener's question, and it's come from Angela from sunny Florida. And she writes, Happy holidays, Mark and Mark. My husband, Alan, listens to all the Fan for Tracks podcasts, and I'm struggling to know what to buy him this year for Christmas. Do you have any recommendations? Also, I'd love to know what's been your top Star Wars Christmas present you've received over the years. So, couple of big questions. What's your suggestions? What's on your Christmas list this year, then, Mark? What are you asking for, if anything?
Weirdly, I rarely ask for stuff, and people don't tend to ask me what I want because they always assume I'm going to want Star Wars. And so there's been many years, and sadly, they don't make the Star Wars annuals here in the UK anymore.
Yeah,
I can't believe they don't do them. It's not Christmas without those annuals, but most years I'd end up with about 3 of them. Because people go, oh, I like Star Wars. And so they'll get me that, or they'll get me, some Star Wars smelly stuff, which is fine because there's some Baby Yoda bath bombs that I want.
Hint, hint.
Hint, hint. I haven't got a bath, I just want the bath bombs. So there's always those little obvious things, which they're always gratefully received. This year, it's usually weird things like Asda or Morrison's will do like a Star Wars themed dressing. I've got 4 Star Wars dressing gowns for some reason. There's always, I feel like Hugh Hefner. So there's always some sort of Star Wars-y pajamas or Star Wars robe, or I'm wearing my Grogu like foot socks. I can't believe I've never worn them before. They're ridiculously comfortable. I'm living in them now. They look grotty as hell, but I love them. If I'm not working, me and Ruth have pajama days, so I'll probably spend more time in my pajamas than actual proper grown-up clothes. I should get a romper suit, really. So anything like that would be what I would like. As far as the suggestion for Alan, well, if he listens to all of the Panther Tracks podcasts, he has excellent taste. So I would push him in the direction of, there's a range of Stormtrooper beers that are probably UK only, so maybe not so good for Florida. If there was somebody that could hook him up, I would suggest those Stormtrooper beers because they do a whole range of, there's IPAs, there's bitters,
and
they're really nice.
As well. I think all this Stormtrooper stuff is coming out of Shepperson Design Studios, original Stormtrooper brand.
I think in the States as well, you mentioned coffee, they did a range of coffees over there with that beautiful Mando art on it. Different Mandalorian art in tins, which we haven't got over here, so I would love to try and pick some of those up next time I'm over there. So in terms of Alan, is it Alan? Yeah, Angela and Alan. So if Alan's a reader, plenty of Star Wars books coming out, and it depends on how deep you want to go. If you want a bit of humour, then there's like the Beam Orlando type DK books. They're sort of fun. Deeper dive stuff like Star Wars Year by Year. That's always a good book to get. There's good stuff in that.
Yeah, we talked about this before, so I just want to remind you. I think it's like page 232. There's a little picture of me.
Hang on, let me have a look. I've got it right here. Let's have a look. I'm going through it now.
It's the April before Force Awakens when you were out at Anaheim, so 2015.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. Okay, it's a bit further out. So here we go. So April. There you are. Yeah, I can see it. Right, stood right above Warwick Davis.
Over Warwick.
Warwick Davis joined C-3PO, R2-D2 and some stormtroopers outside the convention centre. Completely wrong. Because you're dressed as Luke in your X-Wing pilot, and there's a Bith behind, there's a Bith next to you, and there's a Jedi. You are famous. You are famous. And you're not, and it says outside the convention, you're not outside the convention centre.
That's outside Leicester
completely
Square.
Wrong. The picture above is Anaheim. Whoever wrote this, terrible. I'm going to have to write in and complain. Definitely a good book to get. Well, what about you before we go to the other question? What would you recommend at the moment?
Well, it all depends, really. I mean, one place which is really good for slightly different stuff, unique stuff, is Zavvi. See, the thing is, I have 2 Christmas lists. I have the Christmas list that I send my family, which is basically stuff which is fairly accessible, because what we do like a Secret Santa, so it's through an app. We pick a person, they put a list of stuff, and then we buy something off our lists. And it's all done as Secret Santa, so nobody knows who you get and what have you. Because of that, I have to be slightly more kind of financially accessible. So there's nothing too crazy. So there's like Funko Pops and calendars and with No Time to Die Blu-rays on there and, all that kind of stuff. But then also there's a separate list, which is for stuff I'm probably going to buy myself. From Zavvi, anyway. There is the 1-to-1 scale Star Wars Republic medallion. So this is the one that Cara Dune gets given, the Marshall medallion. But also there is a fantastic Mandalorian, what they call a premium replica box set, which it's got the client's kind of like Imperial medallion, and it's got the Mythosaur necklace that we kind of see with Grogu, and like a chunk of Beskar and an ingot. So that looks quite cool. But it's difficult, isn't it? Because like my mum's always like, well, you get too much Star Wars throughout the year anyway, so I don't want to keep on buying you Star Wars. And then also it detracts from the specialness of it. And I kind of didn't really want to push my luck too much this year because, let's be fair, I was given by Karen, she brought me Stormtrooper armor for my birthday. So when it comes to Star Wars gifts anyway, birthdays or Christmas, that probably is the best. But what about you? What's your most memorable Christmas present you've had, be it big or small?
I was lucky, and it's not unique, from sort of 79 through to about 84. It was Star Wars Christmas was every Christmas, but the one that sticks out in my mind the most was Christmas of 83. The Christmas of 80 was when I got my snowspeeder and my AT-AT. I got my Falcon, could have been 79 or 80, or 80 or 81. It's those, give or take. I know I got the Star Destroyer the one Christmas, I think it was 82. By Jedi, I didn't get many big bits for Jedi. I sort of got those later. But Christmas of 83, by then I was doing a bit of fan fiction and I was writing a lot. So my mum got me, and my dad, of course, got me Return of the Jedi cassette. I preferred cassettes to vinyl, weirdly. And that year was the year that Raiders came out on video. So that Christmas, it was Raiders on Video 2000 and Return of the Jedi on cassette. And I played that cassette to bits. So, that's the one I remember, is the Christmas of 83.
This is going forward a few years. So it would have been 1999, so just before the turn of the century in August. For my 18th birthday, my parents said, what do you want? What I'd really like is a boxed Millennium Falcon. And I found one. I mean, back then, again, it wasn't even eBay. I think there was a retailer called Toy Loft, which used to advertise on the back of the Star Wars Insider magazine. Yeah.
I remember Toy Loft.
So Mum got it from there. But, this was kind of like June or July. And then my brother turned around and says, I wouldn't mind, as it's my 18th birthday, I wouldn't mind another guitar. My parents, I think, put a bit more importance on the 18th birthday because it's like, you're coming of age. And so my mum was like, do you really want this ship? What about if we were to get you a bass guitar? So I ended up getting my Fender Jazz, and which was great, and I loved it. And then it rolled around to Christmas. By that point, I'd completely forgotten about the fact that I'd asked for this Millennium Falcon. And then Christmas Day rolls around, and I'm presented with this nice big box, and in it is that Millennium Falcon, and it was pristine. So it's a Return of Jedi box, which is in nice, tidy condition. Unapplied stickers, and all the accessories, so like the training remote and stuff, were all in little baggies. So this had never been played with. So that is probably the one thing that really sticks out in my mind, because that was just like, wow, that was a good find anyway, let alone the fact that, I didn't have to buy it myself. So so probably that.
Because we're doing Panther Tracks and we talk here every week on Making Tracks, and we both do other things, you with the Legion and me with other bits and bobs, it's something that's in and around us literally every day. I mean, every day. And when you're a kid, because kids are wired differently, Star Wars is everything, but then when you're playing football, football's everything. Or when you're doing something else, that's everything, And so you're more present in whatever you're doing, I think, sometimes as a kid than you are as an adult, because when you're an adult, you're spinning 16 plates. When you're a kid, the ball coming towards you and you heading it in the net is all that really matters, because mum's going to make you tea and dad's going to pay the bills and you're going on holiday anyway. And there's all, you don't have to think about a lot of stuff, so you're more present. And I think with Star Wars now, because it's weirdly more around us and more everywhere to us as adults, what we both do, than it was as kids. We always start the show with, what have you got this week? I haven't had an awful lot lately, but most weeks there's like, oh, well, this came and that came and this came and that came. When it gets to Christmas, like you say, sometimes you think, what did you get for Christmas last year? Oh, yeah, I got that really nice such and such. Oh, was that you?
Yeah.
It's tough sometimes. So looking back to those early Christmases, which is why I thought this one last week, the Vintage Show, was such a great show. You're in that room with people who are all, within a few years of each other, similar ages, and you look to your left and there's Gus Lopez, who's like one of the world's greatest Star Wars collectors and a top bloke to boot. And you look to the other side and there's like dealers and people that you've known for years, all into the same stuff, all kind of getting a similar buzz.
Yeah.
It's nearly Christmas. Dave always times it just right. It's like a couple of weeks before Christmas. So you're in that zone anyway. That's a great room to be in, and it totally fits with the question that, as you say, Alan and Angela.
I think you're kind of right in some respects, because, like, for me anyway, coming into Star Wars collecting after what is, now commonly referred to as the Dark Times. And the Dark Times was, 5-6 years, maybe?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I suppose. I think Panther Tracks finished in 87. That's when Star Tours started, though. So I think it's kind of subjective in a way. Star Tours starts in 87 when the Fan Club magazine stops, and then Lucasfilm magazine starts. There's not much coming out. There's no toys coming out. Outside of that and West End Games are about the only people releasing anything in the Dark Times until, like I say, Dark Empire, Edge of the Empire. So yeah, I'd say 3.5, 4 years. It was busier than ever for me because I was role-playing, so that was the busiest time for me, not the quietest.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Because like you said, because of no internet, it's like you're basically staring down like a deep, dark well or dark pit. You don't know where the bottom is. But you think even people who are born in the 2000s, or even myself, there's been Star Wars present, and there's always been Star Wars around us since, we've grown up. And I think, obviously, we do take it a little bit for granted, because, like you said, we're both in it and around it every single day. But I think we can count ourselves pretty lucky, the friends that it's brought us, and obviously the experiences that we've done, and been really lucky, because it's not like, everybody gets to go to premieres. I guess what I'm trying to say is that for me and you, I think we could say that every day is almost a Christmas day for us when it comes to Star Wars.
Hi, this is Julie Dolan, the voice of Princess Leia, and you're listening to Fanthetrax. It's your only hope.
If there wasn't Star Wars, I mean, obviously a lot of other things wouldn't happen if there wasn't Star Wars, but if it wasn't Star Wars, what would I be into? And I'm like, I know I'd be into Trek, but I kind of got into Trek because of Star Wars. I only got into Trek because Jedi finished and there was nothing else, so I got into Trek because of that. And Potter, I really love Potter. I'm big into that. We go regularly. But then I was reading Spider-Man comics before Star Wars came out, so maybe I just wonder what my focus would be if it wasn't Star Wars.
You also wonder actually how much of this would have come about if there wasn't Star Wars. It's one of those things that you can start to unravel if you start thinking about it, because obviously...
Oh yeah, it's the multiverse, isn't it? It's like, if that changes, then that wouldn't happen, there'll be so much further behind. Yeah, if Star Wars hadn't have happened, then ILM couldn't have got to the point where they could do Jurassic, and then George wouldn't have thought, I can now make the prequels. And there's so many things that wouldn't line up if it hadn't happened the way it did.
And I think even the notion of like a movie franchise... Yes, like you said, there's Trek, which, as you said before, kind of gets referred to as the franchise. But other than that and James Bond, there wasn't really any big kind of pop culture franchises that had a consistency over the years.
Planet of the Apes was maybe the closest. I mean, that was film and TV. That was the first one that was film and TV,
then,
wasn't it?
You know, you get to the fourth and the fifth Planet of the Apes film, and they're being made for like $2 million. They're absolutely diabolical. It would be a big hole if Star Wars wasn't there.
Hello, I'm Warwick Davis, and you're listening to Fanthetrax.
So for our final interview for the day, Carl Bayliss, Desert Planet Disc Carl Bayliss, had the chance to catch up with Gav from the Retro Draughtsman. Gav, you will also know as half of Toy Shop on Tour. This was Gav talking to Carl all about his work as the Retro Draughtsman, and this was at Wales Comic Con in Telford.
Hello, this is Carl for Fanthetrax, and we're here at Wales Comic Con in Telford, and I'm chatting now to Gav, aka Retro Draughtsman, aka Cult Locations Inc., and many, many more, I'm sure.
And more to come.
More to come.
When I think of a new idea.
Yes. How's it going, Gav?
It's good. It's been a good show. Really busy.
Good stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, we stopped by earlier and you had 2 tables full of wares, and you're down to half a table, so clearly a good day.
Definitely can't complain.
Yeah. You've obviously been busy creating lots more of the Cult Locations pictures.
Oh yeah, over lockdown I think I did 60 new drawings or
60
something.
new drawings.
Or just shut in the office drawing.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose that's one of the things for people such as yourself. Now being out at conventions, it's one thing having the time to create, but a little bit too much time to create.
Exactly, yeah. It's nice as well because doing the conventions, and you'll know this yourself, you sort of get to know everyone.
Yeah.
And you've not seen these people for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
And it's great, you're just catching up with everyone. It's really nice.
That's it. So lockdown was obviously quite busy for you.
Oh yeah, it was mental. I think I had a busier lockdown than anyone else. Apart from obviously the NHS.
Yes. Yeah. So now we're sort of getting back to something like normal.
Yes.
As you say, it's nice to be back out and seeing people and actually getting the response for your work as well.
It's nice actually getting it in person.
Yeah.
Yeah, the online's good and it's great getting the sales online, but there's nothing like meeting the people. Yeah.
Brilliant. And of course, one of the other things you've been busying yourself with, sort of in between lockdowns, is Toy Shop on Tour.
Toy Shop on Tour.
With Joe and cameraman and editing supreme,
absolute genius Matt.
Yes. Yeah, so readers of our site will hopefully have seen the posts about it, but tell us a little bit about sort of how that came about.
Okay, well, what it was, we initially planned to do Toy Shop on Tour. It was going to be America. We were going to visit all the vintage American toy shops. And then COVID happened, so we couldn't do that. When we did a Kickstarter, we got some money in. We spent all that money on all the flights and everything, so they're all there. So America one day. So yeah, Toy Shop and Toy. We thought, right, let's do it in the UK. There's enough good vintage toy shops. Let's go and have a look at them. Let's go and do some buying.
Yeah.
And we did, and fortunately we knew a lot of the guys from the shops anyway. But there were some that were a complete surprise. And it was just good fun. It was hard work because we filmed the entire series in 2 and a bit weeks. Ooh. So one episode is 1 day of filming. Right. So it was like rapid for 2 weeks. And it was great, and it was interesting because you kind of think vintage toy shops are all going to be pretty similar. and they're not at all. Everyone's got their own idea of how to do their own shop, and it was great. It was so nice to see. And we obviously pinched some ideas for the toy less vintage.
That's it. Yeah, as you say, that's one of the things that certainly as a viewer, you've kind of got this image of little shops tucked in the back streets of somewhere because it doesn't get the throughput or whatever for a big full high street shop or whatever. But the variety in the locations is just stupendous.
We saw some amazing stuff. I mean, the Star Wars stuff alone that we saw out there. Like Peter Weeks' collection, for example.
Yeah.
Oh my word. We were speechless walking into this room like, oh man.
It is something like that. You do start to rack up with like how much stuff you've basically junked over the years and go.
But Peter preserving it for everyone.
There we go. So you're up to, I think episode 9 goes live this weekend.
10 went up today.
Oh, 10 went up today.
Yeah.
Right. Ooh.
So there's 2 left.
There's 2 left.
11 is sort of the final episode on tour. So 11's sort of the real final episode.
Yeah, and then
12's a nice kind of recap on it all with some extra footage and some little outtakes and things.
And a big display of everything you bought while you were on tour. Which has now got its own shop.
Oh, I tell you what, it was like a personal shopping trip for me.
Yeah.
I bought so much on that tour just for myself.
I mean, some of the stuff as well was really surprising. Some of the things that people had got. I can't remember who it was now, but had got all the original video artwork for like the Ninja Turtles and the My Little Pony.
Not Space Pirates.
Space Bridge.
Space Bridge.
Yes.
Oh, that was a good shot. Yeah. Oh, I know. I love original artwork, obviously.
You could see the pain on your face.
And it was like, I'd have been happy to pay the money if it was it had to be something really that I wanted. Yeah. And the ponies and everything were really nice, but it just wasn't quite the image that I wanted.
No.
But it was nice though. Nice to see.
Yeah. So any more plans for more Toy Shop on tour?
Well, we have started discussing Series 2 and there are a couple of little plans in motion and some specials as well.
Brilliant.
To sort of fill in the time.
Cool.
So it will definitely be coming next year.
Good stuff.
We'll have Series 2.
How about for yourself? Have you got anything planned over the next couple of months?
No, this is my final show, so I'm going to relax as much as I ever relax, which is not really. I'll do a bit more drawing, try and come up with the next idea for doing shows.
Brilliant.
And see how we go.
Great stuff. Well, thanks for talking to us again today, Gav.
No
Lovely
worries.
to see you, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Yep.
Cheers.
Well, that really is all we have got time for this week. So thank you very much, Angela, for sending in that question. And I hope that whatever you buy your hubby, he's happy with. And I hope that both of you have a really cracking Christmas. I'm off to go wrap up some presents, mainly for me. But if you have a question, like a festive one or otherwise, please send them in. Mark, can you let the good listeners know how they can kind of get in touch if they don't know?
Well, they should know by now, Mark.
That's true, yeah.
But if they don't, they should get it tattooed to the back of their hand. But in the meantime, if they're wearing gloves, I will read it out anyway. If you want to be a part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fanthatracks.com or check out the free Fanthatracks.
Free!
Fanthatracks app through the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. Thanks, Chewie. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds @Fanthatracks, and be sure to subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Fanthatracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. And happy Christmas to all you guys. Remember to tune into our Fanthatracks news show, Good Morning Tatooine. It's live Sunday evenings, 9 o'clock UK, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific on Facebook and YouTube. And I think until we talk next week, when hopefully the Book of Boba Fett will be out, that's me done for this episode.
That is you done for this episode, I think. So have a good Christmas. I hope you and Ruth have a magical time. You up to much? Are you seeing family and friends, or are you staying by yourself in your pajamas?
Well, I'm always in my pajamas. No, we've got I've got a few days work ahead of me. Christmas with the in-laws and going to see some friends down on the south coast. So we're COVID permitting. Hopefully we'll be able to do that. We'll see how things pan out, but that's the plan. Quite a busy one. How about you?
Hopefully, all being well, we're going to go see Mummy Mulcaster for Christmas Day, and that, so see my sister, and then off to the in-laws on Boxing Day. So kind of doing the rounds and that. I think making up a little bit for last year. So fingers crossed we're all able to do it and that. So have a great Christmas, mate. I will see you afterwards, where we can sit down and chew over the Book of Boba Fett. And of course, to everybody else, I hope your sacks are over brimming with things that you all asked for this year. Have a Merry Christmas, stay safe, go get those booster jabs if you haven't already. I'll leave you with this to mull over whilst you're chewing on your turkey. What do you get a Wookiee for Christmas if he's already got a comb?
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Desert Planet Discs.
Well done.